and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee-Jiun in Seoul. Let's get started with a glimpse of today's highlights. Korean and U.S. trade officials were still at odds after their meeting on Tuesday over possible revisions to the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. Ministry of Science and ICT briefs President Moon of its plans to better prepare for the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution while boosting R&D support. Stay tuned for these stories and more coming up next. Household credit here in Korea is growing alongside the country's ballooning debt burden as borrowers continue to take advantage of regular low interest rates. Data from the Bank of Korea showed household credit had risen 2% during the second quarter from the previous three-month period. It also surged $115 billion compared to the same time last year, with total credit seen at over $1.2 trillion at the end of June. Household credit, which is tallied every quarter, includes credit purchases and loans from both bank and non-bank financial institutions. After months of speculation, trade officials from Korea and the U.S. sat down on Tuesday to discuss their bilateral FTA on the request of the Trump administration. Now, Seoul made it clear that there will be no amendments unless an objective assessment is made beforehand. Our Lee Jung-yeon has more.
It takes two to renegotiate. That's Korea's position on revising or modifying its free trade agreement with the U.S. After holding a joint committee session in Seoul between trade officials from both sides, Korean Trade Minister Kim Hyun-jong said he had firmly told his U.S. counterpart that the bilateral treaty cannot be modified or revised, as Washington has insisted, without a proper assessment of the treaty's impact on both countries.
We have not reached any agreement. Seoul has certainly not agreed to Washington's unilateral call to revise or modify the deal. We have stressed that there first needs to be an objective review, which is conducted by both sides.
The joint session had been requested by the U.S. Trade Office last month to consider possible amendments regarding market access in South Korea for U.S. businesses, but most importantly, to address what Washington insists is an unfair trade imbalance between the two countries.
We have explained that the FTA is not to blame for its trade deficit, which doubled after the treaty's enactment. It's likely due to various micro and macroeconomic factors in the American economy. In fact, Korea's goods surplus with the U.S. has narrowed about 30% in the last 6 months.
To protect American manufacturing and jobs, the Trump administration keeps pointing out Korea's trade surplus in goods, which comes to about $24 billion US. But given America's service-oriented economy, its surplus in service goods hit around $11 billion last year. So Korea's total surplus isn't that sizable.
In fact, the U.S. Trade Representative Office said in a report last year that America's shipments of manufactured goods to Korea had actually grown by 8.4% by 2015, after the FTA took effect. That's double the average pace of growth the U.S. saw in its exports to other countries over the same period. In terms of jobs, the U.S. benefited from the creation of 2.6 million jobs in the private sector by 2015, roughly 4 years into the agreement. Trade Minister Kim said arrangements for follow-up talks had not been set and that Korea will wait for Washington's response to its proposed analysis on the impact of the treaty while preparing for all possible scenarios. Lee Jung-yeon, Business Daily.
So while both Korea and the U.S. await yet another round of trade negotiations, industry officials are saying that Washington should not pursue a complete overhaul in trade terms. For one, the U.S. beef industry recently sent a letter to the U.S. government stating its opposition to any changes in the trade deal that would endanger the industry's increasing market share in Korea. But American automobile and steel industries, on the other hand, are anticipating changes that could potentially benefit their sectors. U.S. automakers have complained that Korea's emission standards are too strict, while steel firms have been hurt by low-cost imported steel. Now, moving on to our coverage of our markets contributor Jemmy Kim joins us on the line. Hello, Jemmy.
Hello.
All right, so how did Korean equities perform today?
Right. Well, today, after some volatility, the Kospi ended almost flat, just 0.05% higher at 2366.4 points. And the tech-heavy Kosdaq closed 0.09% lower at 643.71 points. The benchmark Kospi opened higher this morning on foreign buying and gains on Wall Street. The Dow Jones hit a 4-month high, while the S&P 500 also closed on a positive note. However, the index dipped into negative territory as institutional investors turned into sellers.
So it's a mixed bag overall, but could you give us a further breakdown of today's trading?
Sure. Well, mixed really was the word of the day for Korean equities that were, for the most part, volatile. We did have some winners in sectors like tech, with Samsung SDI closing 1.89% higher. Steel was down, however, with Korea's number one steelmaker POSCO ending 2.79% lower. Financial shares saw both gains and losses. As for the market heavyweights, Samsung Electronics rose 1.02%. Naver, whose founder recently announced that he had recently sold off a 0.33% stake in the firm, closed 0.78% higher. Korea Electric Power Corporation and LG Chem were also up.
So what are some of the factors that are expected to either boost or weigh on sentiment for the remainder of the week?
Well, possibility of tax reforms in the U.S. have already had some effect in global equity markets, and there are some other events that are expected to keep investors on their toes this week. European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi and Fed Chairwoman Janet Yellen will be delivering speeches later this week at the Jackson Hole Symposium in the U.S. Experts are not predicting any drastic changes in tone, as global central bankers have yet to see enough economic data to make any policy changes. Bankers and policy experts attending the forum will also be quite wary of any comments or actions that could potentially unsettle the financial markets. This has been Jemmy Kim for Business Daily.
The Presidential Job Committee has vowed to hire more regular workers, prevent discrimination among irregular workers, and create more private sector jobs. Now, these were some of the main policy goals brought up by the committee during a press conference held earlier today. Commemorating the 100th day of its launch, Vice Chairman Lee Yong-sup said the committee is preparing a 5-year job policy roadmap due for release in mid-September. He stressed that the organization is set on establishing a nationwide job framework that can efficiently and effectively promote employment in terms of cutting down irregular positions. He said companies will not be allowed to hire part-time workers for cost reduction purposes. He added, however, exceptions will be made on labor demand for non-recurring and specialized job tasks. Officials at the Ministry of Science and ICT have highlighted its long-term policy goals, and their focus is on the fourth industrial revolution. It's expected to bring about some major changes, not just to relevant sectors, but to the lives of the ordinary Korean citizens. Our Lee Eun-shin tells us more.
Following discussions with President Moon Jae-in, Korea's Ministry of Science and ICT announced its immediate and long-term objectives. Plans under 2 key agendas were introduced on Tuesday, increasing support for research and development and taking charge of every aspect of the fourth industrial revolution.
We have to build a system centered around researchers. That's the reason the ministry was established.
Complaints have arisen over the government's research funding being heavily oriented towards studies that can lead to profit. To address that, by the end of this year, the Science Ministry will be given more control over the funding of research by having a say in judging the feasibility and thus the spending limits of R&D projects. Previously, that was the purview of the Finance Ministry. The government will also nurture technology development. In the years to come, the use of big data will lead to new ways to prevent car accidents and determine the causes of fine dust pollution and other environmental problems. With the arrival of the fourth industrial revolution, simple tasks will be increasingly automated, and the number of jobs requiring creativity and technical knowledge are expected to expand. On that front, the ministry wants to become the enabler of the coming changes by creating new jobs, supporting the kind of learning future workers will need, and introducing education projects to help people get a better grasp of the policy and technology shifts now underway. Lee Eun-shin, Business Daily.
The number of new births here in Korea is looking to stay on its path of sharp double-digit declines. According to a report from Statistics Korea on population trends for June, 28,900 newborns were registered during that month. Now, this represents a 12% on-year drop and the first time the number has fallen below 30,000 since December, when it reached a record low. The country is now on track to fall short of 400,000 annual births for the first time this year, with the total number of newborns in the first half coming in at under 190,000. Meanwhile, new marriages fell by 8.2% on year to 22,300. 2 weeks have passed since the Korean government announced it would allocate a huge multi-billion-dollar portion of its budget to expand the country's health insurance coverage. Now, many have welcomed the news, but there are still voices of concern. And we have our Oh Soo-young with us in the studio today to discuss what kind of issues have been raised. Hi, Soo-young.
Hi, June.
All right, so the health insurance plan, the government has set some ambitious goals, hasn't it?
Yes, the government's new plan aims to make healthcare affordable and accessible for everyone, expanding health insurance coverage to 70% of total expenses, up from 63.5% in 2015. That's, of course, in line with its key policy agenda of achieving inclusive, people-centred growth. The move has largely been welcomed by members of the public, as the rate of health insurance coverage is currently below the OECD average. Koreans also bear a much heavier burden of paying for uninsured procedures like MRIs and ultrasounds. The burden rate of 36.8% is almost double the OECD average and 8 times higher than that of France. If the health insurance reforms are initiated as scheduled, individual spending on medical care is expected to be reduced by 18% overall and 46% for low-income households. The burden of uninsured treatments will also drop by an average of 64% overall and up to 95% for low-income earners, as some 3,800 medical procedures, including MRIs and ultrasounds, are expected to be covered by insurance in the next 5 years.
So leaving no medical treatments uncovered. Now, the intentions are good, but it must come with a hefty price tag.
That's right. The biggest point of concern is that at the end of the day, someone has to foot the bill, worth some $27 billion. The government says a third of the costs will be covered by savings from the health insurance fund accumulated over the years. The rest will be met by raising insurance premium rates and injecting more government funds. However, experts aren't convinced about the soundness of this plan.
Amid Korea's rapidly aging society, premium rates are already on the rise anyway, as more costs have to be shouldered. Also, using the reserves can't be a sustainable means of funding in the long run, as it means we are using up deposits as they come in.
The biggest concern is the burden that the younger generation will have to shoulder. The number of people over 65 currently stands at around 4.6 to 4.7 million, but this will rise to 7 to 8 million in 10 years' time. This means more medical costs will be incurred. Even if we raise premium and even taxes, it looks like we'll run short on insurance funds in the next 10 years. In that case, there will be no coverage for young people when they visit the hospital and no subsidies for medicine.
In fact, the Finance Ministry projected in March that premium payments will record a deficit next year, cutting into the accumulated savings, which are likely to be depleted by 2023. Experts say another source of concern is that lower costs for treatments are likely to exacerbate inefficiencies in the medical system, as with cutting down on selective costs, such as eliminating extra fees for more experienced doctors and lowering charges for semi-private patient rooms.
Without regulations to prevent abuse of the system, excessive visits to the hospital are likely to increase, especially in big university medical centres. Meanwhile, small and mid-sized medical practices are likely to lose patients. Also, in the long run, if the medical sector sees its stream of income waver, as it loses control of setting the price for uninsured treatments and selective costs, this would affect its capacity to adopt or invest in new technologies.
Now, that is quite troubling. I mean, I guess the government will have its work cut out ensuring that they don't have any holes in the plan.
Yes, it definitely needs to work on the finer details. Beginning with the financing issue, experts say the government must first iron out inefficiencies in the insurance system that lead to deadweight losses.
Currently, a small pool of people pay the insurance premium, but a large number of people benefit from it. For instance, overseas residents, though their medical rights should be protected, of course, only need to pay 3 months of premium to get coverage. Systematic adjustments need to be made to overcome such issues, as well as prevent leakage of funds in terms of allocation. Then, if necessary, we need to raise taxes after reaching a public consensus.
Also, the government needs to consult and find agreements with the medical industry as it carries out reforms.
Compared to other countries, even the US, where healthcare is privately insured, Korea lacks public healthcare services provided by the state. So expanding insurance coverage means increasing the government's control over private hospitals and individual doctors. So the government must consider whether the medical industry is receiving sufficient payment for its services that will become insured in the next 5 years.
But more than anything, the current administration needs to look long-term, ensuring the reforms last beyond its current 5-year term.
We need to look 20, 30 years into the future when mapping out the budget and predicting the demand for services. There has been a tendency to make drastic changes in welfare policies in the past due to partisan politics. So in order to make sure that the reforms are steadily implemented, there needs to be a mutual understanding between politicians as well as a broad public consensus.
Well, it looks like it will take some time, but hopefully we'll see a well-functioning healthcare system sometime in the near future.
Yes, let's hope so.
All right, thank you so much for coming in today.
You're very welcome.
It looks like hard times are ahead for Hyundai Motor and its sister company Kia Motors, as they have been seeing dropping sales, and GM is rumored to be pulling out of the Korean market. Not only that, Kia is caught up in a court battle with the labor union, adding to pressure felt by the automakers. Here's our Elliot Kim with more.
Korea Development Bank, the second largest shareholder in GM Korea, is set to lose its veto power to block any stake sale in the automaker in October. With that, GM is being rumored to pull out of the Korean market following the expiration. Facing huge deficits, GM has already sold assets in both Europe and Australia.
If I did, I probably wouldn't tell you anyway, right? So I would say when it comes to rumors and speculation, there is really nothing I could comment on today. And what he just talked about, I have no knowledge of.
Hyundai and Kia, the country's top two automakers, are also facing struggles due to sluggish sales. Due to China's THAAD retaliation, their combined sales in China between March and June fell by 330,000 vehicles, to just half of what was seen last year. Kia in particular is facing mounting concerns, as the company deals with the class action wage lawsuit from the labor union, which could result in the firm paying billions of dollars in compensation. With labor negotiations proving as difficult as ever, domestic automakers have floated the notion that it would be cheaper to move production overseas. On the other hand, experts recommend that the automakers look at their own market competitiveness and what they can control, before blaming market factors that they can't control.
R&D efforts to diversify product portfolios are lacking compared to other developed countries.
Experts fear that a slump in the auto industry, which accounts for 14% of exports and 12% of manufacturing jobs, could become a drag on Korea's overall economy. Elliot Kim, Business Daily.
The proportion of people in their twilight years is growing rapidly here in Korea. With the trend picking up pace, the country will officially become an aged society next year. However, a lot of older people perceive age as just a number and are trying to stay as active and healthy as possible. And our Kim Hae-sung reports on how these citizens are creating new demand in the market.
Model So Eun-young struts down the catwalk in her own charismatic style. And it's not just her glamour that makes her stand out. 73 years old this year, So Eun-young is the oldest model ever to take part in Seoul Fashion Week 2017, one of the most prestigious fashion shows in Korea. This is the happiest time of my life. I've always dreamed of becoming an actress when I was young, even going for beauty pageant contests. But coming from a conservative family, Ms. So says she married early and became a housewife. After her children had grown up, she wanted to find something new, something for herself. I started modeling around 2 years ago. Now I'm not just physically healthier, but also healthier mentally and emotionally. I no longer beg my daughter to hang out with me. As I became more independent and energetic, my personal relationships have also improved. It's the beginning of a new chapter of my life. This is a model catwalk class targeting senior citizens. Since opening in 2014, the class has been full of students as the number over age 65s in Korea continues to grow, accounting for over 13% of the country's total population in 2016.
Most students are in their 60s and 70s. Some come to pursue their old dreams. Some come after retirement for better posture or to make friends. On the market side, senior citizens find advertisements by senior models more relatable. So there's more room for models to perform, be in fashion shows or commercials. Demand for catwalk classes is growing, and now we are opening classes at department stores.
It's not just the private sector that is offering a range of classes. The government is also creating more programs for the elderly. This community center in Seoul has launched new programs catered to the elderly, such as dance and musical instrument classes, and it's even opened a small movie theater that plays old classics. The movie theater showcases a different film every week at less than $2 a ticket. The subtitles are larger than usual, making it viewer-friendly.
Watching old classics helps me recollect memories of the past.
I used to go hiking or just sleep at home. Now I visit this center often. It's a great place to spend time with friends. Rather than feeling lonely, I can spend time productively and stay healthy.
Opened in March, the community center was designed to create a new kind of silver hall where senior citizens can realize their potential for physical and social well-being.
I've always wanted to learn guitar. It's great to learn an instrument for free and make friends who share a similar interest. I mean, people now live longer. 60s are like the 50s back in the day.
Experts say a growing number of senior citizens are looking for ways to spend their time productively, not just because their numbers are growing, but also because the elderly today are different from those in the past.
We use the term active senior. They are mainly the baby boomer generation who received higher education, enjoyed rapid economic growth, and are economically well off. Thanks to better medical services and pensions, they are healthier, live longer, and want to pursue an active lifestyle, be it hobbies or spending money on themselves, their happiness.
The senior market has grown rapidly and is set to hit $110 billion by 2020. Thanks to seniors' higher purchasing power, department stores around the country saw their proportion of spending hit double digits. And now stores selling senior citizen-only products have popped up.
We provide all kinds of safety and health-related products. Since opening in 2014, we saw our sales double every year, and we have opened more branches across Seoul.
Of course, the so-called active seniors with high purchasing power show just one side of elderly life in Korea, as the country still has the highest rate of impoverished elderly citizens in the OECD. Yet with the nation's over 65 set to hit over 10 million by 2025, and with more aiming to stay active, they are set to create new demands and slowly change the structure of the consumer market. Kim Hae-sung, Business Daily.
And that brings us to the end, but we'll be back tomorrow with more of the day's top business stories, so don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching and see you soon.